Hey guys, welcome to Pet Rambles. I'm Pet and today I'm going to ramble about The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. This is the second book of the Liveship Traders Trilogy, and I do have them here. It comes in two volumes. This is the Romanian edition. I like to switch things around. Sometimes I like to read on paper, sometimes I like to read comic books, sometimes I like to read on my Kobo. Sometimes I like to listen to audiobooks and then read at the same time. So yeah, this is me reading in Romania and on paper, which is why I have those things here. But I am going to call Nemira out a bit because it's a little bit absurd what's going on, and I think I've done it in the first video. There are 3 volumes in total. Volume 2 and Volume 3 are able to be bought in Romania, or from Nemira's website, from libraries and so on. It's everywhere, right? Volume number 1 has been out of print for a long time, to the point where I was lucky to buy it from someone on a second-hand website, and you can't really find it anymore, and if people are to sell it, it's pretty expensive. So Nemira, what the hell is going on? Print the freaking first volume already. Not for me, but for other people, because it is a pretty good book, and you know what? It also this thing with 2 volumes for 1 volume. Yeah. It was also like weird when I wanted to buy this. I was reading like it's second part of the trilogy, but then it's volume 1 and then volume 2. I was like, what's going on? And now I understand. But yeah, anyway, shout out to Adnan, also like fabulous work with the covers as always. So yeah, this is the second book, as I've said. It will be a spoilers video. This is kind of like the book, the video that you watch after you yourself have read the book. If you want to see if this is a series you would enjoy, I do recommend you to watch the first video where I go into depth a little bit without spoilers, who is this book from and so on. But one thing that I do want to mention again is that this is still a book about the characters and what's going on with them. It's not a book about good versus evil. You have no idea who's going to win. It's not really even about winning or losing. I mean, I guess losing it can be, because everybody's kind of losing in this in this world. But it's like, who, you know how some books are, or how movies are like, the rebels won, or stuff like that. It isn't like that, which is why I kind of enjoy this book. And Robin Hobb is writing pretty nice. This is the second trilogy from her universe. Even it's in the same world, but they are not connected, so you can start with this one. So anyway, I started this book in summer. I finished it in November. I wrote the script in December, and now it's January 2026. It's not the book's fault. It is a very slow book, but it's not boring. So it's not boring, it's just slow. And I do have this thing where during the summer I like to be more outside, and last summer I also bought a car, so I went with the car driving around, and I wasn't in the mood to read on paper, which is why it took so long. But the thing is that because it's a slow book and so on, you can take your time with it, and you're still it's not like the book is expecting you to be very enticed, very, very embraced, so you can have some kind of aha moments. It's kind of like this slow-paced story where things are going on. So yeah, I wrote the script. Whenever I'm kind of like finishing a book right now, in order for me to get stuff out of my head into somewhere. For once I'm making a video. This is also for me to get things out of my head, but for things that basically what I'm trying to say is that I'm taking notes. Whenever I'm finishing something, I like to go over what I like, what I didn't like, characters and so on. So later in the years, if I want to say, hey, what I liked and what I didn't like, I can check my notes and be like, oh yeah, this is why, or whatever. And while I was working on the script, I've looked at it and like one page, another page, and then only a little bit here. I was like, I don't want to read this. It's too much. I want to be brief. So it's kind of like a bit of a different video, because you will see me reading from the paper. Generally, I like to improvise my rambling into. I see my notes and I just go with it. But because I finished the script and the book some time ago, things are kind of faded away from my head. which is good because, you know, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I can reread the book again, maybe. But yeah, I split this up into characters, and each of the characters that I kind of grouped together into plots, let's say. And I will start with Malta Vestrit, which I think it's... I wanted to say the most interesting character. I guess that one is more Kenneth, because Kenneth is more crazy. But Kenneth is crazy in a sociopathic way. There are people like that in the world. But Malta seems to be a little bit more grounded. You can see those kind of people all around you. And what I wrote here is Malta has an interesting evolution. In the first book, I call her a narcissist. Now I'm not totally sure. She does want to make things better for her family. She does want to save her father. She's still a little bit spoiled, but I don't see the narcissist anymore. Yeah. She's still playing with the suitors. She had to Rain and Sherwin. She's still looking into her social status. She's still feeling neglected by her family, who are stressing over debt and family. An important step into her maturity is at the summer ball. The satrap is visiting, which is, by the way, also pretty interesting thing that's going on. And she's trying to charm him because she wants to convince him to send ships to save her father. The thing is that she kind of fails at flirting because, you know, the satrap is much more experienced. So the flirting didn't work. Then we had that crash that happened, which kind of strips away her vanity. She also finds purpose when she does the pact with the dragon. She negotiates. She demands that if the dragon wants to be freed, the dragon needs to save her father. So by the end of the book, Malta becomes a person who takes charges much better than her mother, who in the first book realizes that she was always protected. I still remember this in the first book on how... What's the father name? Mother name? I kind of forgot. Anyway, we will get to her later. She was like her father and the grandmother. You know, the mother of the mother of Malta. I kind of forgot the character names, some of them already, but I will remember them. It's kind of like an interesting character, and I'm curious like where this character is going to go, because right now she is kind of like at a turning point. Right, at the end of the book, the dragon left. She's still there. She's kind of not interested in being married anymore or something like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the third book, which is kind of important. Whenever you finish a first book or the second book on a trilogy, they also kind of need to wrap things up a little bit, and not be just like a huge story of 3 volumes, you know, like and this second volume kind of like wrap things up nicely. Then Reign Krupus and the Ancient City. I kind of didn't care that much about the reigning city. It's a bit weird because I wrote the script in English, but I read the book in Romanian, so there are things who are translated, so it might not make sense. So Reign, it's one of Malta's suitor, but more important, he's more important one story-wise. He's trying to court Marta. The dream box, that was an interesting concept on how he was courting her, and he sent the dream box and she opened it and they met in a dream. The interaction with the dragon was also interesting. He was the only one who could hear the dragon and no one believed him. So he also had his own frustrating things there. Also curious to see how that thing is going to turn out, because after the events he seems to be a little bit more important now than just a normal suitor. Then Captain Kenneth, the second most interesting character in the book, the bizarre sociopath one. I find this character fascinating. I think in the first video I called him a proper sociopath. I don't think he's a psychopath, but a sociopath for sure. I am pretty intrigued by him because to some degree he does want to do good in his own way, even that the good seems to suit him more. Freeing the slaves, making a new state where he is the king. An interesting evolution in the story was on the island where he sees his mother, and we get a couple of his ambitions. His ambitions to be king isn't just greed, but he is kind of trying to fix his childhood trauma. this idea of King Kenneth was implanted by his father when Kenneth was little. His mother has no tongue, which Kenneth finds convenient because she can't argue with him. He just steers the conversation to whatever subject he wants. It is interesting that he seems to care about his mother. So I'm kind of like wondering why. Why does he care about his mother? Because he's bringing stuff back to the island. That's kind of like the idea. But yeah, more. Another thing that happened on the island is the abandonment of Withrow's father, Kyle Haven. I'm really interested to see what happens to Kyle. That whole dynamic between Kyle and Withrow was a mess. In a way, Kenneth leaves Kyle on the island to free Withrow from his father, so he can manipulate Withrow better. He managed to seduce Vivacia. One thing that I noticed is that Vivacia is naive. That's interesting part because Vivacia was just born. She's very much naive, and I remember when Kenneth was going at night to talk with Vivacia, and she was very impressed by the things that Kenneth was telling her. Another bizarre plan of Kenneth was Withrow to impregnate Etta, so he can have a blood person on Vivacia in case that Withrow leaves. So yeah, a lot of things have happened, but those are kind of like the main points that I enjoyed. The island, the fact that he kind of convinced Withrow also that he's good, and let's actually go to Withrow. Withrow went through a lot of shit, especially with his father, or because of his father. He's also getting through a lot of things because Vivacia and her connection with Kenneth. He's very jealous, like he doesn't feel the bond with Vivacia anymore because Vivacia is more into Kenneth. Initially, I was under the impression that Withrow sees through Kenneth, like Withrow can see that Kenneth has like a plan, and he was very skeptic about Kenneth, especially when he was sometimes started talking with Vivacia, right? Vivacia was like, "Oh, Kenneth's so great," and Withrow was like, "No." But now, near the end of the book, I'm not really sure. He sees himself as the prophet, or at least that's the narrative that Kenneth gave to Withrow. He's becoming more in charge and less of a constant victim. He's also like one of the, there are so many characters in this book, and all of them are so very different that you are kind of like, they are archetypes basically, right? And it's interesting to see how the solutions are going to be with those archetypes. How are they going to resolve, right? Etta, for example, he taught Withrow how to kill. I mean, how to use the knife, and then Withrow had to kill. So he's getting a little bit more grown up, let's say. He's not feeling like a sorry ass. It is understandable because after all, Withrow is 14 years old, so he's still a child, a boy, who he's supposed to come back at his grandfather's funeral, and now he went up into this whole thing where he's kind of like a slave. Like, really curious what the hell is going to go with his father, with Kyle, right? Kyle Haven. Etta also becomes a bit of a character. I wanted to say an important character, but let's say that there are other more important characters in the book. Everyone has their own path and stories, but here we have a path and a story for Etta. What the hell we wanted to say? We can see that she is strong. We can see that she is jealous because Kenneth gives too much attention to Vivacia. We can see her angry because of her ignorance. She transforms her hate of Withrow into a fondness after Withrow teaches her to read. Kenneth puts Withrow to teach Etta how to read. At first she was a bit resistant, but at one point she reads something about herbals which she enjoyed. I think she went, if I remember correctly, she went to Kenneth to read him about the herbs, or I think it was some poetry, that she was excited, but Kenneth was dismissive in his own sociopathic way. So yeah, Etta kind of becomes a more important character right now in this whole world of Kenneth, Withrow, and so on. I'm not sure what to say about this character as an opinion. Besides, I'm going to use this word "interesting" a bit too long, too much, because it is. They are interesting, and I don't know how to describe some of the characters. But anyway, Vivacia. The main thing that I wrote, that Vivacia is very naive. She listens to Kenneth's stories and plans, which draws her closer to him and further away from Withrow. Althea at this point is totally out of the picture, so I'm curious how the story is going to end, because let's not forget that Vivacia, right? She just came alive when this whole thing, and Althea was the purpose of Althea was to become the captain of the ship Vivacia, right? But then Vivacia went into this whole thing where Althea doesn't matter in Vivacia doesn't matter into Althea's story for Vivacia's sake. Althea still wants to go to Vivacia, so very curious how things are going to combine. There are more things related to magic with live ship dragons, but I'm not sure how to make of those things yet. There were things here and there, and I'm not going to go into details because I want to read more about it. There is a backstory to the wood and so on, right? And how the ships are coming alive with dragons and serpents and whatnot. But I'm going to wait and see. The mad ship, Paragon. Paragon is still an angry toddler. At least he got fixed and now he's riding the seas. This is when I kind of like wanted to cut things short. So, so I wrote this kind of like, and then Brash and Trail at Althea, Vestit and Amber. I kind of got those together. Brashen got convinced by Amber to fix Paragon and ride the sea. He's fixing the relationship with Althea a little bit, but their story continues. That's kind of the whole thing that I wrote. It was an interesting way on how Paragon is being frustrated, Paragon is being blind, Paragon wants to get his side back. Amber is there to help Paragon, that's one of his purpose. Amber was able to influence or suggest to Brashen for them to be a bit more proactive and go on this path. But yeah, it was an interesting path, but not that interesting, I believe, like the others. I'm curious more on how they are going to combine. Althea-wise, other things that I remember was that she was trying to prove herself, right? And he got to the other live ship, Orphea, something like that. And that was also interesting in her character and her evolution on how she basically turned herself into a boy man because they didn't want to seem people that she's a woman, right? And she was able to work hard and do things, and what they were like hunting some kind of seals, right, on the beaches. So yeah, that was an interesting thing with Althea when she came back with Malta, and how Althea is kind of like not liking Malta that much. That's also an interesting thing. Kind of like the crazy aunt, and then Malta is also not liking Althea because what Malta sees Althea that look who I caught the bastard. I'm not sure if he appears in the other video also, like he's troublemaking, he's plotting stuff. So yeah, and then Brashen was classic stuff of he's kind of like regretting the things that he did with Althea, and he wants to fix the relationship, the friendship, and so on. But he still kind of wants a little bit more. Althea maybe wants a little bit more. There is a love story there, so we'll see. The collapse of Bingtown and the Satrap. That's also something that's very interesting because generally, right, in some books where the good is winning and so on, you don't really see this kind of things where the actual can we call it main town? It's not the main town in the whole thing, but it's a main town of the book, of the characters here is falling down, right? It's burning out. And we don't know the aftermath of the whole thing because they ran away, right? The Satrap also was interesting. He also had like an interesting story. Let's see what I wrote actually. So we also have those political aspects of Bingtown and the Satrap and so on. Satrap decides to come into Bingtown, but there are an entire thing planned. All those things happen at the end of the book, so I'm really curious to see what happens. We have the Satrap kidnapped, so they have a bargaining chip. The Vadristar dies, poor guy. Bingtown burns, old traders and versus new traders. So that was the whole thing on how the old traders are trying to keep things like the old way and not use slaves. The new traders are coming in, they use slaves, but they can cut the prices down, which is an interesting economic aspects and moral aspects of the whole thing, right? Davad was trying to be like the good uncle and so on, but still be in the both ways, you know, both worlds, but they ended up him dying. So yeah, it is I'm going to use the word interesting again. Who was the mastermind behind it? Because, or is there one? Or we just have the collective of all the new traders, because we kind of don't know exactly what happened there. Who was planning to kidnap whom, or the satrap and so on, right? And the last thing that I wrote here is the serpents, and I wrote there is an entire thing with the serpents. Luckily, we only had bits and pieces. Somehow I found those things boring and not that interesting, not because they were really boring, but because there are other characters and plot lines that were so interesting that I kind of don't care about an extra thing. I know that serpents, dragons, living ships, they are connected somehow. So kind of like that's what I wanted to, yeah. I want to see what happens with Kenneth, with Withrow and so on. I don't want to see this other plotline of serpents. Luckily, the chapters weren't too long when they were talking and so on. But yeah, maybe in the third book, which I forgot how it's called, I can't see for them. So yeah, this is kind of like it with the second book of this trilogy. I'm curious to hear your opinions. I kind of got, as I've said, this is the first time when I'm kind of reading like this. I want to see how it's turning out. Generally, I'm getting bullet points and I'm kind of improvising the story that I want to say. Here I just read, and then here and there I've rambled about the whole thing. Really enjoyable book, slow as I've said, but sometimes we need a little bit of slowness in our lives, right? But yeah. Thank you guys for watching. See you soon. Goodbye.